Hey mom, how's it going?
I am having a good day, Lindsay. The sun is out. It is beautiful, and I'm here in Hilton Head enjoying life. How about you?
Doing good. I've had plenty of agency calls today, and it seems like the world of insurance is bright, even though there's a hurricane headed straight for us this week. So,
I know.
fingers crossed that the rest of the week stays smooth sailing.
I am really hoping that we've had all of our internet interruptions and power interruptions in advance of this hurricane. Maybe it's just like a prelude to what we're going to be experiencing, but I'm hoping that we're past all of that. I will tell you though, Lindsay, I've been looking forward to this podcast for a while. As you know, data, technology, relationships, I think defines the agent of today and tomorrow. And today we have someone who believes that data is important inside an agency, probably more so than me. But we are welcoming Kabir Syed, the CEO of Ennabl, the founder of Risk Match. Like, you might be the godfather of data inside the industry, Kabir. I don't know. Welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you very much, Carrie and Lindsay. First of all, how lucky are you to work with your daughter? How lucky are you? I
I
can
know.
only aspire to do that.
I know. I'm with
Congratulations.
you. Yeah, Kabir, I'll
Congratulations.
tell you, it's a gift. It is definitely a gift that I do not take lightly. So I appreciate you saying that. Yeah, for sure.
So, Kabir, we haven't had the chance to meet and get to know each other a little bit. So, give me a bit of background on you and why insurance and why data in insurance.
You're going to love this story. Very, very accidental, me getting into insurance. I didn't, so my parents were professors and then diplomats later on. And I didn't grow up saying I'd love to be in insurance. I fell into it by pure chance. And so my first job was in Saudi Arabia insurance. It was a new insurance carrier. I started there. I hated living in Saudi Arabia. Really, it was a very tough place to live. But I enjoyed working because it was research and I loved doing research. Came to the US, and my offer after I graduated from business school was with Johnson and Higgins. It doesn't exist now. It was acquired by Marsh. So I was the last employee of Johnson and Higgins, January 27th, 1997, and they were acquired in March. So I thought I'm going to be the first one to be, fired. And the reason I joined Johnson Higgins was that was the only company that wanted to hire me and give me a green card. Now think immigration, right? So I fell into it by pure chance. And I stayed at Marsh and Johnson Higgins for 17 years.
Wow.
I had 14 different roles. I enjoyed every one of them in 17 years, 14 different roles. My friends are there, everything I've learned. And I tell people honestly, I've learned everything I know from Marsh and Johnson Higgins, both good and bad. The people I know, the clients, my clients today, I met them when they were there. So it has been such I would say, a blessing for me to be in insurance because it has helped me become somebody, become knowledgeable and understand people and develop relationships. Most people be in a job and it's a career for them. For me, it has become like an extended family. And any person who knows me will say, yes, we know Kabir for so long because he grew up with us. And that's what I enjoy about being in insurance.
So what's crazy though is insurance and data don't really go together. Like, if we're being real,
Well, they
especially
don't now, but they should.
100%. But if we're talking about when you joined Marsh and then you moved to, being one of the original founders of Risk Match or even Ennabl, like, walk me through how you get from there, because arguably, like many people say, we're one of the least forward thinking technology adopters of any industry out there. So tell me why you chose that path.
Excellent question. But I'm going to say this is where I'll differ. I think insurance and data go together very well. Our perception of data is different from what we think it is. For example, whether you're a producer or underwriter, a producer, when they look at a risk, or an account manager, they know this is going to come along with this risk because I've done this 4 times. Now, you might say it's experience, but what is experience? It is looking at something and you have ingrained in your system, in your head, that this is what it is. And that interaction I call as data. Now, whether you like this or not, but for most people in our industry, data means it is sitting in an AMS, it is sitting in a CRM. I'm saying data means whatever you have learned, it just synthesizes this, an easy way to automate some things. That's what data is. But you ask a producer, hey, well, what do you think this company should buy, or this industry, or a bakery, or whatever? And they're very clearly, they'll say, here are the 4 things. How do you think they came up with this? Because whether they read about it, they have placed things, they have seen clients. Now, if you tell me that is not data, tell me what it is. You might say it's intelligence, or it's knowledge, or wisdom, but that's every interaction that they have had or have learned from somebody else. So that's what I call data. So in my head, data is something that is very close to insurance. We know how it is underwritten. We know what to offer. We know who to go to. That is all data. Now, it might sit in different places. So that's one part of it. On the second hand, I don't think we use less technology. I'll be very honest with you. I think we use a lot of technology. Our sequencing is wrong. So I'm the first one to say, do not buy technology. And when I say technology, is tools. The reason is every time you buy a tool, it comes as an empty shell. So if you think, we were far ahead of doctors and others to use email. So is that not technology? That was technology. We are far ahead of doctors and others to use CRM systems or billing systems. So why do we feel? I don't feel we use less technology. I just feel we don't use technology the way it is supposed to be used. The problem with our industry, whether it's brokers or it's the same thing, right? Both brokers and carriers. We buy tools. So you can ask any insurance broker, they'll have an AMS system, or they'll have an accounting system, they'll have a CRM. But we don't think of, when I buy something, what is the other manual work did I add to this person who's using it? And that's what I mean by saying we should first think of the data. Will the data go into the system? And then use the technology or the tool.
Yeah. Spoiler alert, Kabir. I actually believe that insurance has more data than any other industry in the world. Like, I think that getting to it, making it usable, and turning it into action is a challenge inside our industry. But I'd be hard pressed to find another industry where you have access to know your customers inside out, backwards and forwards, that you wouldn't be able to leverage it in order to make it. So I was being slightly facetious saying that it doesn't go together. I believe it goes together. The problem is connecting the dots and connecting all of these different technologies. So tell me why risk match? Like, what was the problem that was existing that caused and drove you to dream up risk match? Can you walk us through that?
Sure. And I'm going to go to your previous question where you said, right, it's not like we don't have data. We have gobs of data. I actually think we are better assessors of risk than the credit monitoring systems, because we have a holistic view of business perspective. What's your appetite for risk, and what are you going to do? The credit monitoring systems only look at your financials. Think about it. One small piece of a business. We look at multiple things. So I personally think the insurance industry should be the next way to assess credit monitoring or risk, rather than just looking at financials. So that's one part of it. But our data is just not in a usable format, which goes to your next question. So why did I start Risk Match, right? Any sane person should never start a company, because it is not... It's
Amen. You can say that again. Amen. Amen. Yes. Go ahead. Sorry.
You have to be a little naive and a little arrogant at the same time, because it's a lot of work, and most of the times it is thankless job. It is a thankless job because you're putting your heart and soul. So I started Risk Match because I thought the ability of what the big brokers were doing was fantastic. The cost of technology was falling down. I said, why only the top 5 doing it? Why can't we do it for the next level down? And I said, we can take it and start it for the next level down. And you can see how it is very useful for the big brokers in making money. And my point was, well, we are one-sided. If you see our revenue base, it's one-sided. It comes from a carrier. So which means we have to make it easy to place, make it easy for the carrier to find deals. So my point was, can we do that for the next level of brokers and analyze and make it easy for our clients? So I started because it was cheaper to now use technology and transfer it to the next level down. And it was tough to actually ask brokers to part with data and part with them, because generally, historically, we as an industry have never done business with small companies. I think as a risk manager, what do risk managers do? They deal with big corporations, because big corporations, they assume, don't make mistakes, or if they make mistakes, it's okay. It's like nobody got fired for using IBM in these old days. So we are just used to that. So very small companies, they never do business. So I started because I thought it was possible to find and help small brokers. And I wanted to do something on my own.
I think that data and technology, and I completely agree with what you said, is we don't have a data problem. We have a data usage problem. We don't know how to format it and utilize it in order to inform decisions and inform actions that we're taking. And I think that data and technology are just absolutely essential to the future of independent insurance agencies that are looking to grow and are looking to scale. One of the hardest things, I think, is looking at big data, like data as a whole. For agencies who are listening to this that are like, okay, there's so much data that I could look at. What are the top 5 data points or data informed things that agency owners should be focusing on?
Yeah. So the first part, right? We are a pipeline for data that we do not pay attention to the goal that is passing through our pipes. And we are creating this problem more for ourselves. And what I mean by that is, we know the risk of a client, but we ask them to put it on paper, which means it's not digitized and can't be reused. This is where I'm trying. We have information and data. It just is not in a format to be reused or aggregated together to give a big understanding of what is happening. So that's the first problem.
Totally.
And we enforce that over and over and over again. Every time you have a renewal, here's a PDF form from Chubb, Travelers, whatever. We just send it to them. I'm like, how difficult would it be to just create a Google form, for God's sake? I mean, it's cheap, easy. I mean, just do that. So that's the first problem. The second point is, smaller. So if you think of the 35,000 brokers and agents, 90% of them are small, which means there is a need for that, right? Otherwise, why would you not want to write with Marsh? Why not? Because you have a relationship, you have a trust, and the product is pretty much same. So why would I go to somebody bigger who can't offer me that service? So that part, as we look at it, what we are trying to understand is to say, what are the 5 points? My point is, we have learned from, let's say, our interactions. I placed 5 personal lines policies. I placed 10 construction. We have learned from that. But our learning is only limited to what we have done. So my first point, to whether you're individual or part of an aggregator or association, it doesn't really matter. You need to learn from everywhere else, because you need to provide that guidance to your client, because then the switching cost is very high. So number one, become more knowledgeable about risks that your clients face and be a better steward for them. Not just place. The reason is, you can pretty much buy a policy online, pretty much for anything. So why does this client come to you? Because they trust you and they believe in your service. So hold up yourself to that, to be that person, right? Be that service for them. So first and foremost, and what I'm going back to is, focus on how you can deliver best to your client, the knowledge and the product, not the placement. I would say that should be the last thing on your mind. The second part you need to think of is, How do I make money? So this is a very tricky question, right? If you're going to be paid by the carrier, are you going to be loyal to the carrier or to your client? So you've got to be very careful.
Definitely.
Think very carefully, who do you want to be loyal to and where do we make money? So which means, let's say I'm going to be loyal to my client and I make money from the carrier. Then make it easy for the carrier to do business with you. And what I mean by that is we have to shuffle between carriers. Get the same relationship that you have. I'm not saying don't shuffle, but my point is do not spread yourself so thin across so many carriers. But what we say is, hey, this is my client's information. But if you have more than 4 people, 5 people who are producers, your client information is going to leak to the carrier. So my point is, why not involve the carrier from the start? Why? Why not? If you are anyway going to give the carrier that information in bits and pieces, make it a standard practice. Whatever, whether it's 3 carriers, 4 carriers, if you have a BOP for a business owner's package, go to the 4 carriers you have to. I'm going after this. Can you help me? What would the code be? Don't wait, make the client wait for 2 weeks. Ask him to fill up this. Because the carrier should be able to help you to say, this is what I can do. This is how I differ. So before you go for just pricing, go for what would it cover rather than after the fact. And it does 2 things. First of all, it actually blocks you or the carrier from going to a different one. So my point is, I know we think of it as a sacred cow. Sometimes these are not good sacred cows. We need to think very carefully, what is our role? Our role is to get the best thing at a given price that the client wants. And I'm not saying one is, I'm not saying buy cheaper or more expensive. Like when you go to a dealership, you decide, I want to buy an expensive car, a safe car, a luxury car, and then you go. So think of what you want. You can't go to a Rolls-Royce dealership and say, I expect Toyota pricing. It's not going to happen. So just think of what you want to do, what the client wants, and say, if you want price, here's what it is. And if you want coverage, here's what it is. You can't get both together. There's a middle ground for a budget option. But we don't seem to think like that. We seem to think, here are the 4 places I go to. I'll just go to it. And it's okay. But just be upfront. You're going to get this for this price. So that's the second point I would say. And the third part is treat people who work for you very well. Doesn't matter where they are. The highest paid in our industry are producers. The lowest paid are account managers. Guess who has a lot more knowledge? I would say the account managers have a lot more knowledge than producers. Nothing against producers, believe me. But account managers know their risk better. So if an account manager, a client executive sells something, who gets the commission? The producer. But who did the work? So my point is treat people well, because these are the ones who are placing, who are doing and servicing. So treat people well because they are the ones who ultimately are the interface with the client. And that is your brand, your company, your values, all of that. Having something on your website means nothing.
So there's a lot of tools, Kabir, in our industry that are trying to help agents move forward and be able to create efficiencies, create profitability, create the ability to focus on interacting with the clients and building those relationships, doing what they do best and eliminating some of the work that maybe is not as high quality. AI, for example, has come into our world in like gangbusters. And I think recently I wrote an article about AI where I talked about different ways that agencies are using AI in order to change their day, change how they're spending their time. One of those was commission reconciliation. And I did a whole bunch of asterisks about like, be careful what information you put into, any AI tool that you're utilizing, all those things. But someone from your team actually reached out and said, I'd love to talk to you about that topic in particular. Give me your take on AI, how it can be leveraged, maybe some alternatives to AI that you think agents should be aware of?
Excellent question. And I want all of your listeners to be very well aware of this, right? One is AI is phenomenal. It is very new. It's going to change how we do things. However, number one, today, it is not secure for whatever you put in becomes in the public domain. So whether the $20 fee that you're paying to the chat GPTs, Claudes, and Perplexities of the world or Geminis of the world should only be used to rewrite emails. Do not give your data to AI today. Do not at this point, especially the smaller ones. So that's number one. It is going to phenomenally be fantastic in a few years. So the second thing that has happened, so AI came into its maturity last year, initial on the stage. What is happening now is there are fantastic models and tools being created with AI. But guess what has happened? Those tools have never been tested on our process and on our choices. And that is a very big problem. And the reason I say that is, so for AI to work, you need, when I say gobs of data, it's millions and millions of data points. So if you do $10 million in business, that means nothing to AI. You have to do hundreds and billions of dollars of transactions for AI to learn so that it doesn't give wrong. So let's just take that part in. The second part is it has never interacted with insurance data. So this is an untested model. It'll need to learn over a period of time. The third part is for it to learn, guess where it has to learn from? Data, right? Where is our data sitting? Which I'm going to ask the question. Structured part is sitting in AMS, and that I can tell you and everybody else can tell you the amount of corrections AMS needs. And it's not because of AMS fault. It's just because we've put wrong things in it, and it's fine. So that's one part. So if you give it wrong data, it's going to learn wrong things because it doesn't know between right and wrong. It knows what you give it. That's the first part, till it knows. The second part is a majority of our interaction is sitting in email and documents. So would you give AI access to your documents and email today? I would not give AI access to my email at all. I would not today, but I will have to in the future because that's how it'll learn. So part one is, the reason I'm saying that is, let's say we had a workers' comp and you picked travelers. Now for AI to learn, why did you pick travelers? It's there probably sitting in an email and a conversation somewhere or in your CRM to say, I picked because the price was better, or we had a deal going with travelers, or we had a contingent agreement. I'm just picking travelers. It could be any other carrier, but it has to have context. We don't have that context in a structured way to feed each deal. That AI will work very well in doctors' offices because they write notes. This is what it is. We don't write notes, right? It's in our head. I went out for lunch with a carrier. He took me out. I had some wine. I said, I'll give you this deal. Or they invited me to the golf. And it's not a bad thing, but that is not there. So the context is missing. So at this point, AI will only go through what you have done without the context. So that's the second part of it. And the third part of it is the model has not been tested across every broker, lots of brokers. It's like saying, I'm going to go to a doctor who has never treated a patient. We need somebody who has treated a few patients before he can look at me. Now, is that a bad idea? Probably. So that's the thing I say with AI. Just be careful. You should use AI, number one, for rewriting emails, creating standard templates. Absolutely. Because there's no specific thing you're giving. You're just saying, I have a renewal. What would the renewal be like? Make it better. Make your profile better. Get your website to do better. Do your marketing using AI. But giving your data that is specific, because this is first party data, which is only you know, the client knows, and the carrier knows. It doesn't exist in the public sphere. Because if you think of how AI has been taught, is everything that is on the public web, it has learned. Everything that's there on the YouTube videos, it has learned. Everything that's there on other videos and movies and things like that, pictures, it's learned. What it has not learned is on insurance or other contract specific things.
Right.
And once it learns, then it becomes public domain. And we don't know who can use it in what way. That is all.
So go ahead, Lindsay.
Well, just on that topic of utilizing AI and it not knowing enough, do you think that there in the near future will be, I don't even know if this is already in the works. You might be informing me of something right now, but is there going to be like an insurance specific that will be specifically trained on AI?
Guaranteed. And it's not going to be 5 years from now. So in 2019, I was speaking for a group of brokers and agents, and I said, in about 10 years, we're going to have AI take over a lot of the work. How wrong was I? And it's been 4 years and it's already there. So it's learning faster than we can even teach it. So, and we don't know how. So that's one part.
Right.
I think personally, in the next 2 years, it will do probably 40 to 60% of the work that we do today. But you have to fix it on the work that you don't want it to do. And my point is, it is very good at duplicative work. It's very good at things that you want a second eye on. But you're the second eye, that's the first eye. So here's what we are making a mistake, right? We are saying, well, it'll take over my job. I'm like, no, let it do. It's like having a housekeeper. They come and clean your house, or you're throwing a party. The caterer does the thing. You're like, oh, put the flour over here instead of over there, because it's a personal choice. So let that be the first choice to do the work, and you will say yes or no or change things. It's not going to eliminate us. It's going to eliminate a lot of the administrative tasks. We should be looking at it and say, what are the 25 administrative tasks in the renewal that I can take off? And that's what it's very good at. And that'll happen in the next 2 to 3 years. Guaranteed it's going to happen. And you're going to say, what happens after that? Well, after that is going to be a little scary for us. But regulation might hold it back. But it's going to be a little scary because it will compare policies. So by mid-2025, today AI's intelligence is like a high schooler. But by mid-25, it'll be the intelligence of a PhD student. Now think how quickly it has done that, right? Because they are feeding so much. There's no more information left in the public domain for AI to read. I mean, think how big it has already finished absorbing the data. And once it gets access to, insurance contracts, insurance notes, your emails, it can pretty much read every email and say, here's who you are. It can be a great assistant in the future, in the very near future. Can it be an agent? Probably. And I'm not saying to be vague, it will be a very good agent. But ultimately, you'll have to say, can I stop and say, I want it to do the first iteration, and I'm going to look back and say yes or no. Because the human mind knows the difference between objectivity and an emotional choice. They're only going to be objective. We are going to make the emotional choice, right? For good or bad reasons.
Right.
So I'm gonna put you a little bit on a spot here, Kabir, because I have a question that maybe you want to answer, maybe you don't. But I think what you're talking about is what a lot of people are fearing. Like, hang on a minute. You said AI is going to be an agent. You said AI is going to, in essence, take over the body of work that an agent does today, unless they are elevating and becoming super knowledgeable about the risk and being able to be advisors. If they're just doing the transactional thing, that's what you just said AI is going to be able to take care of. They're also, AI is not going to be loyal to any one thing. It's going to actually just do the transaction, and it's not going to have compassion for people. It's going to, again, just do the transaction. So what you're describing is it's going to do pieces, but not have the relationship part. And the question is, how important of this three-legged stool is the relationship part to our industry? And if you believe that it's incredibly important, then I think you believe that AI is a tool and not a replacement. If you don't think that it's important, then you think it's a replacement. So what's your take on that? Am I paraphrasing what you said appropriately?
Yes and no. So what I mean by that is, look, you wanted to do this repetitive task. Why would you want to do? It's like saying, I used to wash, when I was growing up, I washed my own clothes or I washed the dishes. Now the dishwasher is doing it. Great. So somebody else. So those kinds of work. So I'm saying it'll do that and let it do that. Number two, it's going to be very objective. or you want that objectivity so that you can put the emotion to say why this carrier versus that carrier. Because it's not going to learn that certain carriers would not pay, every carrier has a reputation. Some pay very quickly, others take too long, some pay, XYZ amounts, and others pay the whole amount. And the third part, it won't be able to judge is, what is your sense of what is really important this was to a business? So if it is a family business, reputation and certain things, what is the most important factor? AI cannot judge that.
Right.
We know the person, right? So my point is, it's like saying, I don't want a housekeeper to do any of the work. I want to cook, clean, and do everything. Why? Why don't you sit and have dinner and lunch with your kids and your family rather than cooking? Unless you want to cook a special dish. Let AI, so that's the part I'm trying to say. It will be further out where it'll learn the emotional piece of it. I don't think so at this point, but that's 10 years away. So it's not going to replace people. It's going to replace the task that you do. However, and this is where it gets very interesting for us. If I think I'm very important because I know the system and I know the AMS or I'm doing everything for the client, then you have a problem. Because my point is, that's not why you are there. You're there to service the client rather than saying, hold the keys to understanding the system. Because today we are saying all of our interaction with technology is based on a role, which is account manager Kabir puts into the AMS, and then account manager sends an email with the coverage. He or she does it into a carrier portal. So it's role based. Why should it be role based?
Right.
What if something else does it? Do you see my point, right? So
Sure,
those things will go away over a period of time. Just because AI is there doesn't mean it's going to take away. Just because we have a calendar and an email, it's not like we are not communicating. We're just using different means to communicate.
Sure, of course.
So it's very important to understand it is going to make our life uber easy.
Yeah.
But it's not going to replace the intentions that we have and what the client needs, because that is not setting any codified manner. Over a period of time, we are going to put that. You're going to say no, and it's going to ask you. So 5 years from now, it's going to say travelers, and you're going to say, no, I think Chubb is better because this is why. Now you put this is why, and it's going to learn for this type of client. You're giving context and why for the specific client. So it's not going to prioritize to say, here are the 5, but you had recommended Chubb last time because of this reason, and this is why. So it's going to start learning that.
Yeah. And you can think about that in a lot of different industries. Like you can think about that when a doctor is examining a person and saying, hey, this same set of symptoms, you said this, and it'll give you the realm of all possibilities, but you said this when these things happened, therefore I'm going to shoot that to the top. I mean, it's going to impact our lives in every way we can imagine. It's not going to replace a doctor. It's not going to actually hold the tools in order to, examine, but it will absolutely change how they research and what they know and make them 1,000 times better than they are right now, in case they've never seen it before. Same thing with insurance.
Right. And
if you've never seen it before. Yeah.
And if you think of doctors, right, the X-rays and scans, the AI reads it better. It's not like the doctor is bad, but they're moving from task to task to task. So they're saying, well, let it read, and you are going to say yes or no, it didn't read it right. Let's do a little more in-depth thing. So you're still the arbiter of what you want at the end, but the menial tasks can be done. So I don't think we should welcome AI, but just be very careful how you choose. Don't just pick and choose companies to say, oh, it's AI, I have to do it. My suggestion is find out how they've built it. What have they used it for? And what will happen to my data? All of those questions doesn't matter how small you are or how big. I know of very large companies who don't use AI primarily for security reasons.
Mm-hmm.
And that includes banks, that includes insurance brokers, very large. You can name the top 10 brokers who are like, be very careful about it because they're not sure. But there will be an insurance focus. I personally think we have a choice as brokers or as carriers. One of them has to make the move to say, here's what I'm going to give you, and I want you to learn so that all of us benefit. The problem we have is we have never come together to say we should do this. And I don't care if it's brokers or carriers. It's the same thing. They're just the lens is different. You have the same data coming from insured to a broker to a carrier. They're using it a different lens. Carriers are using it a little more. It's expensive now, but they're using it a little more than brokers. But we, either one group or the other, has to come and say, let us do this. Instead of saying, I want to tackle insurance regulation, because regulation will always be behind anything we do. Because ultimately, are you responsible as a broker, or is the AI responsible? Because that will change, right? That is going to change whether you like it. I mean, we think of now what happened in Jordan or Lebanon, where the pages blew up. Who is responsible for it? Is it the producer who's responsible for it? Or we don't know who did it. There's generally a sense of who did it, but we don't know. But who's responsible? Now think if AI does it, is Carrie Wallace responsible or AI? So regulation will take a long time. So
For sure.
it'll impede the progress, which is actually good, because we have to understand these are life-changing decisions, right? You're going to make, should I buy this or not? Should I pay this or not? All of those are big things. So it's good and bad for us.
Yeah.
But we should encourage that, right?
Yeah, but I think the whole point is using it in moderation and knowing what you're using it for, and the impact
Very
that
important.
you're using it for is crazy important. Well, Kabir, we could talk about this forever. Like literally, this is a topic, number one, it's super near and dear to my heart, because I believe that the gap between those agents that are using data and using technology and leveraging relationships and those that are not is getting wider and wider. And it's creating those that we will be the acquirers and those that will be acquired, because it'll be harder and harder and harder to compete with those that are actually giving themselves that leg up. I believe that fully, and I can tell by talking to you that you also believe that this is part of our future. There's no way for you to do this without it.
Yep.
If someone wants to reach out to you and talk to you more and say, like, how do I even get involved? Like, where do I start with this thing? How could someone reach out to you and learn more about Ennabl, learn more about you in general, and maybe seek your guidance?
Absolutely. And we are very a small part of it, right? And I always say there are hundreds of different things to do. My personal email, my email of the company is kabir@ennabl.com, or they can just say info@ennabl.com, sales at Ennabl. It doesn't really matter. If you want me to reply personally, I will absolutely respond. And I have a lot of, they're not clients, they're prospects. They're forever prospects, where all they ask is, hey, I'm thinking of this. What do you think of it? Absolutely happy to. Because this is such a big choice, right? You have to go with who you're comfortable with and take advice from multiple people. We have no skin in the game. Whether you use this or somewhere else, it is absolutely fine.
Yeah. Well, Kabir, thank you so much for joining us today. You're a pleasure to have on, and I'm guessing this is not going to be your only appearance on our podcast, for sure.
I look forward to it. It's actually a pleasure. And Lindsay, you should be so grateful to be working with your mom. I can only dream of a day where I can work with my son and my daughter.
Yeah, maybe someday. Have them come talk to me when they're ready to join the industry. I got you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right.
That was fantastic.
Recording.
Thank you. That's awesome. It's super fun talking about these things with people that see it, from a little different perspective. So I appreciate you spending time with us.
And you can start seeing it. We actually see about 2 to 4% difference in margin for people who use data very carefully. And sometimes they only use towards carriers, sometimes they use towards clients, and sometimes towards their own people. But we see that difference. And that difference widens dramatically as you go bigger.
No doubt.
Because it's like more than 4%. Like,
no doubt about it.
If you see the margin difference between Brown and Brown, NFP, or Aon, and then Locked, it's huge. And it's not because of sales. It's just how they use the data.
Being smarter in the way you operate.
It is being smarter, yeah.
Yeah, I totally get it. Well, thank you, my friend. It was super great getting to know you. Please tell Ryan I said hello, and I've not seen him on the road this year, so tell him that I've missed seeing him for sure.
I know. I wish you were there at AppliedNet. We were there in Nashville. Was it last week? I think it's last week. Yeah.
I've taken a little break from the road recently, so
I know it is exhausting.
I'll get back out there. It is. Yeah, it totally is. Exhausting. So anyway, all right. Well, I'll talk to you really soon. Great meeting you.
Thank you. Pleasure.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Lindsay.
How'd it go?